In a noisy world where people rush through their days half asleep to themselves, there is a journey that few ever dare to begin, the journey inward into the depths of the mind. Carl Gustav Jung, one of the greatest explorers of the human soul, once wrote, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. And in the hour ahead, you will not only listen to fall asleep, you will gently sink, sleeping, into a deeper kind of awakening." This voice will guide you through the entire landscape of Jung's ontology, the hidden layers of the unconscious that move beneath our waking lives, the archetypes, those ancient patterns we all carry, the shadow we would rather not face, the masks we wear, and the long, beautiful journey toward becoming whole, which Jung called individuation. If you have ever wondered why you repeat the same patterns, why your dreams carry such strange and vivid messages, or why life can feel empty even when you seem to have everything, then these reflections are for you. Jung believed that within every human being there sleeps a deeper self waiting quietly to be discovered. You do not need to study or strive. You need only to let your breath slow, let the day dissolve, and listen. And perhaps tonight, as you drift towards sleep, you will not only find rest, you will begin gently to find yourself. Our journey begins where Jung's own great work began, with a revolution in how we understand the human mind. For Jung challenged one of the deepest assumptions of his age, and in doing so, opened a door into the hidden depths of the soul. Before Jung, the prevailing view, shaped by his teacher Sigmund Freud, held that the unconscious was little more than a dark basement of the mind, a place where we buried our forbidden desires, our painful memories, our repressed urges. It was seen as a passive container of everything we did not want to face. But Jung looked deeper, and what he saw changed psychology forever. The unconscious, he came to believe, is not a passive basement at all. It is a living, dynamic system, active, intelligent, even purposeful, that shapes our waking lives far more than we realize. Jung gave us one of his most famous and sobering insights here. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Sit with the weight of those words. He is telling us that the forces moving beneath our awareness, our hidden fears, our unexamined patterns, our buried wounds, do not simply lie dormant. They quietly steer us. They shape the choices we make, the people we are drawn to, the conflicts we keep repeating. And because we cannot see them, we mistake their influence for destiny, for bad luck, for simply the way things are. This is why Jung saw the exploration of the unconscious not as a strange indulgence, but as the most important task of a human life. For if we do not turn and look inward, the unconscious will go on running our lives from the shadows, and we will never understand why. But if we dare to make the unconscious conscious, to gently bring these hidden forces into the light of awareness, we begin, for the first time, to truly live our own lives rather than being lived by forces we cannot see. There is a beautiful image in this. If consciousness is a small boat floating on the surface of the sea, then the unconscious is the vast ocean beneath, deep, powerful, full of currents and creatures we have never seen. We cannot drain the ocean or fully control it, but we can learn its tides, come to understand its movements, and live in harmony with its depths rather than being tossed about by them unknowingly. Tonight, you do not need to dive into those depths or analyze anything. You need only to soften toward this gentle truth, that there is more to you than your waking, thinking mind, a vast inner world quietly working even now as you rest. And as you drift towards sleep, you are entering the very realm Jung spent his life exploring, the threshold of the unconscious, where the deepest part of you waits, patient and alive. And as we step across that threshold, Jung makes a discovery more astonishing still, that the unconscious is not ours alone. As we begin to sense that the unconscious is a living world beneath our waking minds, a deeper question arises. Whose world is it? Is it only our own? The private storehouse of our personal memories and experiences? Or is it something larger? Something we share with all of humanity? Here, Jung made one of the boldest and most original discoveries in the history of psychology, that there are two layers to the unconscious, the personal and the collective. The first layer Jung called the personal unconscious. This is the part that belongs uniquely to you, the forgotten memories, the suppressed emotions, the experiences too painful to hold in awareness, the small wounds and impressions that have accumulated across your lifetime. It is like the sediment of your own personal history, settled quietly beneath your conscious mind. This is roughly where Freud stopped. But Jung saw that beneath this personal layer lay something far deeper and far older. He called it the collective unconscious, a shared inheritance belonging to all of humankind. Beneath your personal memories, Jung believed, lies a vast common ground, a kind of psychic library that every human being is born with. It does not contain personal memories, but something more profound, the inherited patterns of human experience itself, accumulated across countless generations. As he wrote, the collective unconscious is the psychic system of a collective, universal, and impersonal nature which is identical in all individuals. This is why across every culture and every age, human beings have produced strikingly similar myths, symbols, and images. The wise old mentor, the great mother, the hero's journey, the flood, the rebirth. These are not borrowed from one another. They rise up again and again from the same deep source within us all. When you dream of a serpent, a sacred light, a nurturing figure, or a shadowy stranger, you are not merely recalling something personal. You are speaking the ancient language of the collective unconscious, a language older than any nation, written into the very structure of the human soul. There is something deeply comforting in this discovery. It means that in your most private struggles, you are never truly alone. The fears you feel, the longings that move you, the inner conflicts you wrestle with, these are not yours alone, not strange personal failings, but part of the shared human experience, echoing patterns that countless souls have lived before you. Your suffering connects you to all of humanity. Your inner life is woven into something vast and ancient and shared. Jung saw the personal unconscious as a doorway leading down into this deeper, universal layer. As we heal our personal wounds, we begin to touch the timeless patterns beneath them. And in doing so, we connect not only with ourselves, but with the whole of human experience across time. Tonight, let this sense of belonging hold you. Beneath your private thoughts and memories lies a deep, shared ground, the same in all of us, connecting you to every human being who has ever lived and dreamed and sought meaning in the dark. You are part of something ancient and whole, and as you rest, you can let yourself sink gently into that vast and welcoming depth. And it is from this deep, shared layer that the great figures of the soul arise, what Jung called the archetypes. From the depths of the collective unconscious arise the great figures and forces that Jung called the archetypes, the primordial patterns that shape how we feel, dream, and make meaning. To understand the archetypes is to understand the hidden architecture of the human soul, the ancient forms that move beneath all our personal experiences. What exactly is an archetype? Jung described archetypes not as fixed images, but as living patterns of energy, universal templates that exist in every human psyche, ready to be filled with the particular content of our own lives. They are like riverbeds carved into the landscape of the soul. As Jung beautifully put it, archetypes are like riverbeds that dry up when the water leaves them, but which the water can always find again. The riverbed is the ancient pattern. The water is our own lived experience, flowing through it. These patterns appear again and again across all human cultures, dressed in different costumes, but recognizable beneath. There is the mother, the nurturing, life-giving force, appearing as goddesses, as the earth itself, as the tender figure in our dreams. There is the hero, the one who ventures into danger to win something precious, found in every legend from every land. There is the wise old man or woman, the figure of guidance and deep knowing. There is the child, the symbol of new beginnings and untapped potential. And there are many more, each a fundamental pattern of the human experience. What makes the archetypes so powerful is that they do not speak to us through logic. They speak through images, through symbols, through dreams and myths and art and religion, the languages of the unconscious. When a story moves us deeply, when a symbol stirs something we cannot name, when a dream leaves us shaken or uplifted long after waking, It is often because an archetype has been touched. Something ancient within us has recognized itself. This is why the great myths never grow old, and why the same deep stories speak to every generation anew. Jung saw that the archetypes are not merely curiosities of the mind, but vital forces we must learn to live with consciously. When we ignore them, they can possess us from below. We fall unconsciously into the role of the eternal victim, the rigid ruler, the destructive rebel, without ever knowing why. But when we come to recognize these patterns within us, we can relate to them consciously, drawing on their wisdom and energy rather than being controlled by them. To know the archetypes is to know the deep cast of characters that lives within your own soul. And these inner figures are not abstractions. They are alive in you, this very night. The nurturing one, the seeker, the wise guide, the wounded child, all of them dwell within you, shaping your dreams even as you sleep. To begin to know them is to begin to know the full depth and richness of who you are. Tonight you need not name or analyze them. Simply rest in the knowledge that within you lives an ancient and vivid inner world, peopled with the great figures of the human soul, and that as you sleep, they move gently through your dreams. And among these figures, there is one that Jung believed we must come to know above all others if we wish to become whole, the one we would most prefer not to see. Among all the figures of the inner world, there is one that Jung believed we must face if we are ever to become whole, and it is the one we most wish to avoid. He called it the shadow. It is the part of ourselves we have disowned, denied, and pushed into the dark, and paradoxically, learning to embrace it is one of the deepest sources of peace and wholeness a human being can find. What is the shadow? It is everything about ourselves that we have refused to accept, the traits we consider unacceptable, the impulses we are ashamed of, the qualities that do not fit the image we wish to present to the world. From childhood, we learn which parts of ourselves are welcome and which are not, and the unwelcome parts do not disappear. They are simply pushed down, out of sight, into the shadow. There they remain, unacknowledged but very much alive. Jung observed a striking truth about the shadow, that what we refuse to see in ourselves, we tend to see magnified and condemned in others. As he put it, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. The traits that provoke the strongest reactions in us, the things we judge most harshly in other people, are often the very things we have disowned within ourselves. The shadow denied within is projected outward. This is why our fiercest judgments of others are so often unwitting confessions about ourselves. Here is the crucial insight, and the one that brings such peace. The shadow is not evil, and the goal is not to destroy it. The goal is to make it conscious, to turn and face it, to acknowledge it, and ultimately to integrate it. For the shadow, Jung taught, is not only the home of our darker impulses, it is also the home of our undeveloped gifts, our buried vitality, our denied potential. The very energy we have locked away in the shadow is energy we cannot use until we reclaim it. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, Jung wrote, but by making the darkness conscious. To face the shadow is an act of profound courage and profound self-compassion. It means looking honestly at the parts of ourselves we have judged and rejected, and meeting them not with condemnation, but with understanding. It means accepting that we are not the polished image we present to the world, but whole human beings, light and dark together. And in that acceptance, something remarkable happens. The inner war ends. We stop spending our energy hiding from ourselves. We become more authentic, more humble, more at peace, for we no longer have to defend a perfect image that was never real. There is deep rest in this. So much of our exhaustion comes from the effort of denial, of keeping parts of ourselves hidden, even from our own awareness. To gently accept your whole self, shadow and all, is to lay down that heavy burden. You do not have to be perfect. You never did. You have only to become whole. Tonight, you do not need to confront anything. You need only to soften toward yourself, to offer the rejected parts of you a little acceptance, a little understanding, a little peace, for wholeness is not perfection. It is the gentle embrace of all that you are. And just as we wear our denied self in the shadow, we also wear another face, the one we show the world. If the shadow is the face we hide, the persona is the face we show. Jung used this word, taken from the masks worn by actors in ancient theater, to describe the social self we present to the world. And understanding the persona, learning to wear it without being imprisoned by it, is an essential step on the path to wholeness and peace. The persona is, in itself, entirely natural and necessary. It is the role we play, the face we put on to meet the demands of the world, the professional, the parent, the friend, the polite stranger. We all need a persona. It is how we function in society, how we adapt to the countless situations of daily life. There is nothing false about having one. The danger arises only when we forget that it is a mask, when we begin to mistake the role we play for who we truly are. This is one of the quiet tragedies Jung observed in modern life, that so many people become so identified with their persona, their job title, their social image, their carefully managed reputation, that they lose touch with the living self beneath it. They become the mask. And then, often in midlife, comes a strange and painful emptiness. The sense that despite all their success, despite playing their role perfectly, something essential is missing. What is missing is themselves. They have polished the mask so thoroughly that they can no longer find the face beneath it. Jung saw that true wholeness requires us to develop a conscious relationship with our persona, to wear it when it serves us, and to set it down when we need to return to ourselves. The healthy person is not the one with no mask, but the one who knows the difference between the mask and the face, who can play their roles in the world without being enslaved by them. They can be the professional, the parent, the friend, and still come home at the end of the day to the deeper self that no role can fully contain. There is a profound relief in loosening our grip on the persona. So much of our anxiety comes from the constant effort to maintain an image, to appear successful, competent, admirable, in control. It is exhausting to perform a role every waking moment, terrified that the mask might slip. But when we remember that the persona is only a mask, not our true self, we can hold it more lightly. We can stop staking our worth on how perfectly we play our roles and rest instead in the deeper self beneath. The self that does not need to perform, that is enough simply as it is. And there is no better time to set down the mask than now as you prepare for sleep. The day's roles are over. There is no one to impress, no image to maintain, no part to play. You can let the persona dissolve entirely and return to the simple, unmasked self that breathes here in the dark, the self that existed before all the roles and that remains when they are set aside. Tonight, let the mask fall away. You do not need it here. You can rest as your unguarded self, whole and unwatched, and let that be enough. And as we move deeper toward the center, Jung reveals another pair of hidden figures within us. The contrasexual soul, the inner opposite we each carry. As we journey deeper into the psyche, Jung introduces us to one of his most subtle and fascinating discoveries, that within each of us lives an inner figure of the opposite nature, a contrasexual element of the soul. In a man, he called this inner feminine the anima, in a woman, the inner masculine, the animus. And coming to know this hidden inner partner is, Jung believed, essential to becoming whole. What did Jung mean by this? He observed that no human being is purely one-sided. Within every man there lives a feminine aspect, a capacity for feeling, intuition, receptivity, connection, the inner life of the soul. And within every woman there lives a masculine aspect, a capacity for assertion, focus, structure, outward action. These inner opposites are part of our wholeness, and yet, because society so often teaches us to develop only one side and suppress the other, this inner figure tends to remain in the unconscious, undeveloped and unknown. And what remains unconscious, Jung taught, shapes us from the shadows. When we have not come to know our inner opposite, we tend to project it onto others, particularly onto those we are drawn to. The sudden, overwhelming fascination of falling in love, Jung suggested, is often the projection of our own anima or animus onto another person. We see in them the inner figure we have not yet recognized in ourselves. This is why such projections can be so intoxicating and so disillusioning when the real person inevitably fails to match the inner image. We were, in part, in love with a hidden part of ourselves. The invitation Jung offers is to withdraw these projections and to develop a conscious relationship with our inner opposite, to integrate the qualities we have neglected. For the man, this means cultivating his capacity for feeling, intuition, and inner depth. For the woman, it means developing her capacity for clarity, structure, and outward strength. In doing so, we become more complete, more balanced, less dependent on others to carry the parts of ourselves we have not yet claimed. We become, in a sense, our own inner biomarriage, the union of our outer and inner natures. There is a deep wholeness that comes from this integration. The person who has befriended their inner opposite is no longer at war with half of themselves, no longer projecting their unlived life onto others and being disappointed. They carry within them a fuller range of human capacities: strength and tenderness, action and reflection, doing and being. They are, in Jung's view, closer to the complete human being we are each meant to become. You do not need to analyze any of this tonight. It is enough to sense gently that you contain more than the single role the world has assigned you, that within you live both strength and softness, both action and stillness, a fuller self than you usually allow yourself to be. And as you rest, you can let all the parts of you, the known and the unknown, settle into a quiet harmony. For all of these figures, the shadow, the persona, the inner opposite, are leading us toward a single great destination at the very center of the psyche, the self. At the very heart of Jung's psychology lies its deepest and most luminous concept, the self. Not the small everyday self of our conscious ego, but something far greater, the total unified center of the entire psyche, conscious and unconscious together. The self is both the center of who we are and the wholeness we are slowly growing toward. And it is, in Jung's vision, the goal of all inner life. We must be careful here, for the word self can mislead. In everyday speech, we use it to mean our conscious personality, our ego, the I that thinks and plans and worries. But Jung used the word self with a capital S to mean something much larger. The totality of the psyche, the organizing center that contains and transcends the ego, embracing both the light of consciousness and the vast depths of the unconscious. If the ego is the small boat on the surface, the self is the entire ocean and the boat together, the whole. Jung came to see the self as a kind of inner guiding force, quietly working toward our wholeness throughout our lives. It expresses itself through powerful symbols, often images of wholeness and unity. The circle, the mandala, the sacred center, figures of profound completeness and balance. When such symbols appear spontaneously in our dreams or draw us in waking life, Jung believed it was often the self announcing itself, calling us toward integration, toward becoming all that we are meant to be. What makes the self so significant is that it represents the reconciliation of all the opposites within us, the conscious and the unconscious, the light and the shadow, the masculine and the feminine, the persona and the depths. The self is the center where all of these are held together in wholeness. It is not the victory of one side over another, but the harmony of all of them. To move toward the self is to move toward a profound inner unity, an end to the civil war within, a deep and abiding sense of being whole and at home in oneself. Jung believed that the relationship between the ego and the self is one of the most important in a human life. So often we live entirely from the small ego, anxious and grasping, cut off from the deeper center. But when the ego learns to listen to the self, to the deeper wisdom rising from the whole of the psyche, life takes on a new sense of meaning, direction, and peace. We feel guided from within. We sense that we are part of something larger, even within ourselves. We come home to a center that was always there. This is perhaps the deepest peace a human being can know. Not the fragile calm of having everything go our way, but the profound stillness of being whole, centered, at one with ourselves. It is the peace of no longer being divided against ourselves, of having all the scattered parts gathered into a single living center. Tonight, you need do nothing to find this center. It is already within you, this very moment, quietly holding all that you are. As you rest, you can simply trust it. Trust that beneath the surface chatter of the mind, there is a deep center of wholeness and peace, and that you can sink toward it as you sink toward sleep. And the lifelong journey toward this center, Jung gave a beautiful name: individuation. If the self is the destination, then individuation is the journey, the lifelong process of becoming who we truly are. Of all Jung's ideas, this may be the most beautiful and the most hopeful, for it tells us that life itself has a deep purpose, not merely to survive or succeed, but to become whole. Individuation is Jung's word for the gradual process by which a person integrates all the parts of their psyche, conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, persona and depths, into a unified whole self. It is the journey of becoming a complete and authentic individual, distinct and undivided. Jung captured its spirit in one of his most cherished lines: "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not who others expect us to be, not the mask we have polished, but the full, authentic self we were always meant to become." This journey is not about achieving perfection. It is about achieving wholeness. And these are very different things. Perfection would mean eliminating all our flaws and shadows. Wholeness means integrating them, embracing the totality of who we are, light and dark together. The individuated person is not someone who has become flawless, but someone who has become real, who has faced their shadow, withdrawn their projections, set down their masks when needed, and gathered all the scattered pieces of themselves into a centered, authentic whole. Jung observed that individuation often becomes most urgent in the second half of life. In our younger years, we are busy building the persona, establishing ourselves in the world, meeting outer demands. But at some point, often in midlife, a deeper call arises. The achievements that once satisfied us begin to feel hollow. We sense that there is more to us than the roles we have played. This is the call to individuation, the invitation to turn inward, to make the unconscious conscious, and to become, at last, our whole and true selves. What can feel like a crisis is often the soul calling us home. The path of individuation asks much of us. It asks us to face our shadow with honesty, to withdraw the projections we have cast onto others, to listen to our dreams and our depths, to reconcile the opposites within us. It is not always easy, but it is, Jung believed, the most meaningful journey a human being can undertake, for it leads to the deepest fulfillment available to us, the experience of becoming whole, of living as our authentic self, of fulfilling the unique pattern of who we were born to be. And there is profound peace at the heart of this journey, for so much of our suffering comes from living divided, from being at war with parts of ourselves, from wearing masks that exhaust us, from chasing a life that is not truly ours. Individuation heals this division. It brings us home to ourselves, and in that homecoming, we find a peace that no external achievement can give. The quiet, settled peace of being fully and authentically who we are. Tonight, you are already on this journey, simply by turning your attention inward, by softening toward your whole self, by resting in your own depths. There is nothing to achieve. The journey toward wholeness unfolds in its own time, gently, across a life. And as you sleep, the deep self continues its quiet work of bringing you home. And one of the primary ways it speaks to us on this journey is through the mysterious messages of our dreams. Throughout our journey, we have spoken of the unconscious as a living world that communicates with us. And its primary language, Jung believed, is the language of dreams. To Jung, dreams were not random noise or mere leftovers of the day, but meaningful messages from the depths of the psyche, letters from the unconscious to the conscious mind, written in the ancient language of symbol and image. Jung saw dreams as deeply purposeful. Where Freud viewed dreams largely as disguised wishes to be decoded, Jung saw them as the psyche's natural way of guiding us toward wholeness. Dreams, he believed, often compensate for the one-sidedness of our conscious attitude, showing us what we have neglected, revealing the parts of ourselves that we have ignored, offering wisdom and balance that our waking minds have missed. The dream, he said, is a window into the unconscious, showing us a truth about ourselves that we may not be ready to see in waking life. The language of dreams is not the language of logic, but of symbol. The unconscious does not speak in plain statements. It speaks in images, in stories, in metaphors rich with meaning. A dream of a house may speak of the structure of your own psyche, a dream of water, of the depths of the unconscious itself, a dream of a journey, of the path of your own life. The figures in our dreams, the threatening stranger, the wise guide, the lost child, are often the very archetypes and inner figures we have spoken of, appearing to deliver their messages. To understand dreams is to learn, slowly, to read this symbolic language of the soul. Jung encouraged a respectful, patient relationship with our dreams, not forcing rigid interpretations onto them, but sitting with their images, asking what they might be showing us, letting their meaning unfold over time. He found that when we begin to pay attention to our dreams, the unconscious responds. The dialogue deepens, and the dreams become richer guides on the journey toward wholeness. Our nights become not merely a blank rest, but a continuation of our inner growth. The soul speaking to us, while the waking mind is quiet enough to listen. There is something deeply reassuring in this vision. It means that even in sleep, even in the apparent darkness of the unconscious, something wise within us is at work, guiding, balancing, healing, reaching toward our wholeness. We are not abandoned when we close our eyes. We are entering the very chamber where the deepest part of us speaks. The night is not empty, it is full of quiet meaning. And so as you prepare to sleep tonight, you can enter that chamber with a sense of trust rather than mere unconsciousness. Your dreams, whatever they bring, are part of your soul's quiet work. You do not need to analyze them or even remember them. You need only to rest and to let the deep, wise part of you speak its ancient language in the dark, continuing even now its gentle work of making you whole. And sometimes, this deeper wisdom reaches even beyond our dreams, into the strange and meaningful patterns of waking life. Among Jung's most intriguing and mysterious ideas is the concept of synchronicity, meaningful coincidence. It points to those uncanny moments when the inner world and the outer world seem to align in ways that mere chance cannot fully explain, and it opens a window onto a deeper sense of connection and meaning in the universe. We have all experienced something like it. You think of an old friend you have not seen in years, and that very day they call. You are wrestling with a difficult question, and the answer appears unexpectedly. In a book that falls open, a phrase overheard, a chance encounter. You notice a symbol in your dreams, and then it appears, strangely, in your waking life. These are the moments Jung called synchronicities, meaningful coincidences that are connected not by cause and effect, but by meaning. As he defined it, synchronicity is the meaningful coincidence of an inner state with an outer event, linked not causally, but through significance. Jung developed this idea in part through his deep exploration of the unconscious and through his dialogue with the physicists of his time, who were discovering that the universe was stranger and more interconnected than the old mechanical worldview allowed. Synchronicity suggested to Jung that there is a deeper order beneath reality, that mind and matter, inner and outer, are not as separate as they appear, but are woven together within a single meaningful whole. The psyche and the world, he came to believe, are connected at a level deeper than cause and effect. We need not accept any particular metaphysics to feel the value of this idea. For at its heart, synchronicity invites us into a more meaningful relationship with our lives. It asks us to pay attention, to notice the moments when life seems to speak to us, to remain open to meaning where we might otherwise see only random chance. It suggests that we are not isolated minds adrift in an indifferent universe, but participants in a living, meaningful whole where the inner and outer worlds quietly answer one another. There is a deep comfort in this vision, and a deep wonder. It hints that our lives are held within a larger pattern of meaning, that the universe is not cold and random, but somehow responsive, somehow woven through with significance we are invited to notice. Jung believed that as we grow toward wholeness, as we deepen our connection to the unconscious, these meaningful moments tend to increase. As if the more attuned we become to our own depths, the more clearly life speaks to us. Whether or not we can explain such moments, they invite us to live with more attention, more openness, more wonder. To treat our lives not as a series of random events, but as a meaningful unfolding worth paying attention to. To remain open to the quiet ways that meaning may be reaching toward us, if only we have eyes to see. Tonight, you need not solve the mystery of synchronicity. You need only let it soften your sense of the world. To rest in the gentle possibility that you are held within a larger, meaningful whole, that your life is woven into a pattern deeper than chance. And in that sense of belonging, of being part of something meaningful and vast, you can let yourself rest more deeply still. For this, in the end, is what Jung's psychology points us toward, a life of meaning and the sacred search at its heart. As Jung explored the depths of the human soul, he arrived at a conclusion that set him apart from much of modern psychology, that the deepest human need is not for pleasure or power, but for meaning, and that the search for meaning, for many, leads to something we might call the sacred, a dimension of depth and significance that gives life its purpose. Jung observed across decades of working with people in distress that so much modern suffering arises from a loss of meaning. In his striking observation, a great many of his patients in the second half of life were suffering not from any clinical illness in the ordinary sense, but from the emptiness of a life that had lost its deeper significance. They had achieved what they were supposed to achieve, and yet felt hollow. What they were missing was not success, but meaning, a sense that their lives were part of something larger, that their existence mattered in some deeper way. Jung saw that the human psyche has a natural religious function, not necessarily in the sense of any particular creed, but in the sense of a deep need to connect with something greater than the ego, something that gives life meaning and orientation. The symbols of the sacred that appear across all cultures, the images of wholeness, transcendence, and the divine, Jung understood as expressions of this profound inner need, arising from the depths of the collective unconscious. To ignore this dimension of ourselves, he believed, is to cut ourselves off from a vital source of wholeness and peace. This is why Jung saw the journey inward as ultimately a sacred journey, to explore the unconscious, to face the shadow, to move toward the self. This is not merely psychological housekeeping. It is the soul's search for meaning, for connection, for wholeness, for what is most deeply real. The individuation journey is, in a sense, a spiritual one, a movement toward a center that Jung sometimes spoke of in language close to the divine, a wholeness that gives life its deepest significance. And here lies one of Jung's most hopeful teachings, that meaning is not something we must find out there in external achievements or possessions, but something we discover by turning inward, by connecting with the depths of our own soul. The emptiness that haunts so many lives is not cured by acquiring more, but by going deeper, by reconnecting with the meaning that arises from wholeness, from authenticity, from living in alignment with our true self. Meaning is the fruit of the inward journey. There is a profound peace in this understanding. It means that the deepest fulfillment is always available to us, not dependent on external circumstances, but arising from within, from the sacred work of becoming whole, of living meaningfully, of connecting with the depths of who we are. No matter what is happening in our outer lives, this inner source of meaning remains accessible, waiting quietly within. Tonight, you can rest in the trust that your life is meaningful, that the quiet inward journey you are on, even now, is the most sacred and significant work there is. You do not need to have all the answers. You need only to trust that meaning lives within you, in the depths of your own soul, and that simply by turning toward those depths, as you are doing now, you are living the meaningful life Jung pointed toward. And so we come to gather the wisdom of this entire journey into something we can carry with us. As our journey through Jung's psychology draws toward its close, let us gather its wisdom into something living. Not a set of theories to remember, but a way of being that we can carry gently into our days. For Jung's deepest teachings were never meant to stay in books. They were meant to be lived in the quiet daily work of becoming whole. The first and perhaps greatest of Jung's invitations is simply this: to turn inward. In a world that constantly pulls our attention outward, toward achievement, toward distraction, toward the opinions of others, Jung calls us back to the neglected inner world. To take time regularly to listen to ourselves, to reflect, to attend to our dreams and our depths. The unexamined forces within us run our lives. The examined ones become our allies. To turn inward is to begin reclaiming our own life from the unconscious. The second invitation is to embrace our wholeness, to make peace with all that we are, to stop exhausting ourselves in the effort to appear perfect, and instead to accept our whole selves, light and shadow, strength and weakness, the masks we wear, and the depths beneath them. Jung's famous words remind us of the goal, not to become figures of imagined light, but to make the darkness conscious, not to achieve perfection, but to become whole. There is deep peace in this self-acceptance, the peace of no longer being at war with ourselves. The third invitation is to become who we truly are, to live authentically according to our own inner pattern rather than the expectations of others. So many people, Jung observed, live lives that are not truly their own, following paths laid out for them, wearing masks that do not fit. Individuation calls us to find and follow our own unique path, to honor the self we were born to become. This is the privilege of a lifetime, and it is available to anyone willing to turn inward and listen. And the fourth invitation is to live with meaning, to remember that the deepest human need is not for pleasure or success, but for significance. And that meaning is found not by acquiring more, but by going deeper. To live a meaningful life is to live in alignment with our true self, connected to the depths of our soul, open to the sacred dimension of existence. This is the source of a fulfillment that no external circumstance can give or take away. How do we practice all of this? Gently and daily. We might take quiet time each day to turn inward, to reflect, to journal, to sit with our dreams. We might practice noticing our projections, asking what our irritation with others reveals about ourselves. We might honor the symbols and synchronicities that life offers us. We might, above all, treat our own inner life as worthy of attention and care. None of this requires grand effort. It requires only the gentle, regular turning toward our own depths until the inward journey becomes a natural part of how we live. And tonight you have already been practicing. Simply by spending this hour turned inward, softening toward your whole self, resting in your own depths, you have been doing the sacred work Jung pointed toward. As you drift now towards sleep, you can carry this with you, the gentle commitment to know yourself, to embrace your wholeness, to become who you truly are. The journey continues, quietly, even as you rest. So we have journeyed together through the vast inner landscape that Carl Jung spent his life exploring. We have descended into the unconscious, both personal and collective. We have met the archetypes, faced the shadow, recognized the masks of the persona, and discovered the inner opposite within us. We have found our way toward the self, the center of wholeness, walked the path of individuation, the journey to become who we truly are, listened to the language of dreams, wondered at the meaning of synchronicity, and remembered that the deepest human need is for meaning, found by turning inward toward the sacred depths of the soul. But if you keep only one thing from tonight, let it be Jung's most luminous truth, that within you, beneath all the roles and masks and surface worries, there sleeps a deeper, whole self, and that the great privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. You are far more than you appear, even to yourself, and the journey toward that deeper self is the most meaningful one you will ever take. The night has grown deep, and there is nothing left to do but rest. Let the day's roles fall away, the masks dissolve, the surface mind grow quiet. Beneath it all, your whole self remains, vast, ancient, and at peace, holding all that you are with gentle acceptance. You do not need to understand it or to do anything at all. You need only to sink toward that deep center as you sink towards sleep, and to trust the quiet wisdom that works within you even in the dark. Thank you for spending this hour exploring the depths of the soul. If these reflections have brought you even a little peace, return whenever you wish to journey inward again. And if you would like to walk these quiet paths together, you may leave a small mark of stillness by subscribing. And now let everything grow still. Look inward and find yourself there, whole and at peace, and let that wholeness carry you gently into sleep. May you rest deeply, and wake tomorrow a little closer to who you truly are. Good night.